We hear, okay, mid-foot sprain. I'm thinking, okay, that's not a huge deal, right? Dude's done for the season, bro. Like, I'm like, golly, what happened here, you know?
Look at the release.
There's your separation.
Great route.
Stutter and go. Gets by clean.
That is unbelievable.
Maybe the greatest catch I've ever seen.
The top news today, Matt. Travis Etienne, rookie running back there in Jacksonville, was thought to be poised to have a really great season. You know, his game tape looked fantastic. You know what I mean? And he's going into a system there with Trevor Lawrence and some familiarity there. It was thought that his workload was going to be pretty good, Matt. And all of a sudden, I mean, listen, we hear, okay, mid-foot sprain. I'm thinking, okay, that's not a huge deal, right? Like maybe he misses 5 to 6 weeks. Dude's done for the season, bro. Like, I'm like, golly, what happened here, you know?
Obviously feel for him. Hope he recovers well, because he would have been, think of whatever you want about like the fact he's a first-round running back or anything. He definitely would have been an exciting to watch, explosive talent in this offense. So it's a bummer that they lose that. It's also not necessarily a straight one-for-one running back replacement, because we know he was also ticketed to play, some wide receiver reps. He was going to get a lot of pass catching work. So there's a lot to break down here. But from just a brass tacks perspective, I was not really in on Travis Etienne where he was going in drafts, because he was pretty aggressively ranked, right? Like you had to kind of take him in like the 5th round. Like James Robinson's a good back, man. He handled a lot of work as a rookie, put up pretty good numbers, was aggressive breaking tackles, yards after contact, whatever you want. Like, and he was one of those backs that just played a ton too. Like he was basically out there for every single snap for a handful of games. Just to put it from a rankings perspective, I initially like I said, this morning when I first woke up and it was just like a sprain injury and everything like that. I bumped Robinson up from running back 32 in my 8th tier to running back 24 in my 5th tier. And then when we got the news Etienne was done, then I threw him at running back 18 in my 4th tier. Yeah, right. Like then you got to put him all the way up there, man. For folks out there that haven't checked out the tiers sheet, that puts him in a group of guys with like David Montgomery, Chris Carson, Darrell Henderson, James Robinson, J.K. Dobbins. And I think all those guys are pretty good bets. They're ones that I would clearly take over. He immediately, James Robinson, jumped over that group of backs that I feel like I've talked about on this show all offseason. The DeAndre Swifts, Miles Sanders, Myles Gaskin, Mike Davis here that I want nothing to do with. I'd rather have Robinson clearly ahead of all those guys.
He was a top 5 pick or a top 5 finisher, I believe, in PPR. No, it was 7. He was 7 overall.
Clear top 10.
Last year. Clear top 10. Regardless of format, he was a top 10 guy. And then when you kind of sort of take a look at that roster, it's him, it's Carlos Hyde.
Yeah.
There's nobody else. It's very interesting when you kind of take a look at that roster. Again, there's not a whole lot of competition behind him, right? Like, I get the fact that we've got a brand new head coach there, so maybe he doesn't give this guy that kind of workload. The bottom line is Carlos Hyde is, I think, a veteran at this point. What is the target competition? What does the touch competition look like for James Robinson, Matt? I mean, it's not very severe. I would imagine he sees a huge workload again this year.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's kind of the thing here. It's unfortunate that it comes via injury, but this is what happens with running backs. Like chaos hits a backfield and it creates opportunities for other players. And most importantly, it creates clarity on one running back's workload. Travis Etienne was going to have a pretty big receiving role. So does that mean James Robinson, who showed okay as a pass catching option, like he wasn't a LeGarrette Blount type as a rookie or something like that, was he just going to get zero receiving snaps? I highly doubt that. And then how much like first down work could you have given Travis Etienne? So again, I think it's an unfortunate way that it happens, but this did create clarity here. And I think most of it is potentially pointing back to Robinson as like a 70% backfield touch guy at a bare minimum here. We're looking now at Robinson leading the backfield in targets, most likely, and certainly in early down rushes. And to me, that puts him in like the 3rd round range. What about the pass catchers too? Like Laviska Shenault, does he potentially get some more targets out of this move with Travis Etienne gone? any more bump for
Yeah.
Jones or Chark on the outside.
You would think so, right, Matt? The fact that Laviska is, I guess at this point, profiling is kind of like this athletic, like gadget super player that you could kind of move all over the field. He was definitely going to get some work as a slot receiver, or a lot of work as a slot receiver,
Yeah.
especially when you look, and maybe it's not even so much Laviska, but you really can't move Marvin Jones inside, and you really can't move DJ Chark inside, right? So it's like almost by default, right, that Laviska is this kind of like catch-all wide receiver. And now with Travis Etienne gone, you would imagine Laviska Shenault will see a few more targets. The last thing I'll say about James Robinson is this is a guy that pushed 300 total touches last year. He actually averaged the 5th most touches per game in the NFL in 2020. So you start talking about volume. Will he see that much volume? Probably not, because I mean the depth chart was even worse, if you could believe it, behind James Robinson in Jacksonville last year. So I would imagine that number to go down because they took Travis Etienne, and despite the fact that Robinson had such a fantastic year last year, at least from a statistical perspective anyways, you just got the feeling that the coaching staff didn't think he was going to be a system fit. You know what I mean? Brand new coaching staff, brand new system. We're running spread. We're going to do all these kind of things. I just don't think they saw James Robinson as a particular fit. And maybe possibly those questions still persist. It's something that we absolutely need to take at least in consideration. And I agree with you, man. Like, they went and signed Carlos Hyde in the offseason. If they feel like he's a better spread running back, I mean, it's not like they're emotionally or financially invested in James Robinson. You know what I mean? So that is something to keep in mind.